Good evening, Vikings. It's good to be with you for our virtual parent and community meeting. As you've probably heard me say before, for those of you who've been with us, I really hate this particular application. To be with you virtually is not the same thing as being in person with you, and I'm still anxious for the opportunity to gather with you in the same space and talk about the future of this district and all the amazing things that we're trying to do for our kids. We have about an hour and a half planned together. I'm not convinced that we'll take that entire hour and a half because as I've glanced through the questions that you've posed, and I'm grateful for those of you who've reached out in advance, some of them have the same themes and are repetitive. And so we'll try to consolidate the answer and deal with some big rocks. So we want to talk about explicitly three things. One is proposed renovations at Normandy High School. Two, return to school, broadly defined, for our students. And three, our school uniform pilot. So let's start with proposed renovations at Normandy High School. Hmm, I do. Thank you. Present is the button I want to click. All right, and so I am often telling people that the greatest part about being in this community is, oh, I stopped sharing with you. Hold on, y'all. I know, I know. I'm being chastised by our director of technology. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Well, while we're waiting for that to reemerge, let me just say that the the thing I love most about our school community is pride of ownership. That whether you've been a Normandy Viking student, whether you've worked in this district, sent your kids or your grandkids to Normandy, or just had some really close cousins that were Vikings, there's a real pride of ownership about being part of our school community, and I love that. You see it reflected in how we come together, and you see it reflected in how passionate people are about the various issues that confront our kids and their teachers. And so, one of the things that concerns us is the condition of the high school. Um, I think people often pass down Lucas Hunt and see that big archway, and it is impressive and it is beautiful, and feel like there's something that has been done to modernize our high school space. When in fact, we've got about 30 to 40 years of deferred maintenance that hasn't been remedied in our high school. It doesn't reflect how much we love and care for our students. And it doesn't reflect our ambition that they become amazing scholars with access to college and career opportunities. And so we propose to bring the high school into the 21st century, and not just as, excuse me, the place where we are doing high school instruction, but really the place where our community convenes. Not just our ninth through 12th graders, but our pre K through eighth graders as well, participating in arts, music, athletics programs, humanities programs. We expect our high school to be the center point of the 23 municipalities that are currently served. So we're anxious to share with you our preliminary concepts. I want to be clear, these are preliminary concepts. There are no floor plans. There are no construction drawings. We're very much at a place where we want to have a conversation with the community about what this renovation should be. And so we know the places we want to touch and some projects that need to get done. But in terms of the specifics of how it lays out and what it looks like and how the space will be used, that's what we want to talk to you about. We want you to be included in that conversation. So whether you're a parent or teacher, whether you're a student or community member, please look forward to these opportunities we're going to put on the table to be a part of that discussion. So let's kind of walk through the concepts. I'm hoping this thing doesn't move faster than I can move. Let me see if I can back up a step, y'all. Alt left arrow. See, the thing is lying to me, telling me that if I hit Alt left arrow, it'll go back. It won't go back, Dr. Green. It won't go back. It'll go forward, but not back. The back arrow is not working. What'd you do?
Hit the back arrow. This one is the back arrow. That's the forward arrow. It's all right. Technical difficulties.
We're going to start again. Now that, see, Dr. Green unlocked something on the computer. She actually broke it. She came and fixed it. Now it works. And now she wants to pretend that it was working all the time, and it wasn't. So let's talk about the high school campus and the places that the renovation would touch, the priority projects. First and foremost, and this is a new piece to socialize. It's one of two proposed actually new construction items that would be on the table, and that's the secured campus connector. As you may know, right now, our students enter through a very thin hallway back by our band room. And when it is hot outside, when it is deathly cold outside, when it's raining outside, when it's snowing outside, we will sometimes have students stacked up 50 deep trying to get into that one small corridor where they need to pass through a metal detector, they need to pass through a backpack check. Oh, and by the way, they need to pass through a temperature scan as well. And so our hope is to create a larger, more accessible entry into the campus that becomes the front door of Normandy High School, the secured campus connector. In addition to the secure campus connector, the second new construction project that is proposed is a community auditorium space. Viking Hall is an amazing athletic stadium, but was not designed for musical theater, was not designed for a convocation for Barack Obama to come and give a speech. It wasn't designed for us to have a community town hall about the future of our 23 municipalities. And so we've proposed, and we'll talk a little bit later about a community auditorium, which would be roughly located on the property where the tennis courts used to be. One last piece of new construction would be to expand West Gymnasium to add 2 additional basketball courts. So in addition to those 3 pieces of new construction, we would also be updating the interiors of West, Central, and East Hall. I want you to pay attention to the notion that when you look at this plan, all of the buildings are connected. And so once we're finished with this project, a student will be able to go from East Hall through the secured campus connector into Central Hall and then into West Hall without having to go out into the elements. Now that isn't to say they can't go across the quad if they choose, but when the weather is inclement, when it's too cold, when it's too hot, a student doesn't have to contemplate whether or not they're going to brave the elements just because they want to eat lunch. We are talking about track and field replacement out at our stadium. And for whatever reason, it skipped that we were going to update Viking Hall, but that is part of the process to update Viking as well. All right, so let's talk about the interior improvements. We want to update all the classrooms, the bathrooms, the corridors, and the stairwells to improve health, safety, and security. I won't go into deep detail on the level of decay. I will tell you that we have classroom spaces where pieces of the ceiling are falling apart. We have spaces in our buildings that are overrun by vermin. We have bathrooms that are shut down because the fixtures don't work. We've had plumbing issues with some of our water fountains. And we certainly have had myriad security issues that our safety and security folks have had to deal with over the years. And so these interior improvements help us to get past those problems. This is one of our classrooms currently. Um, and the hope is to move to a classroom that reflects the 21st century, where the furniture is movable, where there's access to not just whiteboards, but white walls on which to write, access to media across the classroom, updated LCD lighting, better access to natural light, new flooring. One of the things that people may not know is there's an abundance of asbestos at both at West, Central, and East halls, and this process will deal with abating that hazard as well. So let's just talk about West Hall for a second. Those of you who are unfamiliar with the campus, West Hall is where our cafeteria is located. And so when we start to talk about West Hall, it would be our first project should the bond initiative pass in April. The first thing we're going to do is to create an interior connection between West and Central Hall, effectively knocking down the wall on the first floor and the second floor, which as of this fall will allow students to pass from Central into West Hall without having to go outside. It is a full renovation of the cafeteria. It's taking two smaller cafeterias and merging them into one large cafeteria with the creation of more of a food court operation as opposed to a standard kind of old school cafeteria operation. Um, it updates classrooms, restrooms, corridors um, within the totality of West Hall. It gives a full renovation of the kitchen and the modern food service equipment. Some of our stuff is quite old. The plumbing is bad. There is tuck pointing that needs to be done around the surface to ensure that we don't have any creepy crawlies coming into the space. And we will be centralizing all of our career and technical education classes into West Hall as a part of the first big splash of renovation at Normandy High School. I'm going to keep bringing you back to our budget so that you have a sense for what each of these things cost, because I think we can talk about how important it is from an educational standpoint. We can talk about how important it is from a spiritual standpoint, but we should also talk about what it costs the community to invest in these spaces. So again, food court, kitchen, stairs, corridors. It doesn't mention it here, but we would also be doing very expensive asbestos abatement in the entirety of West Hall. That's floors, ceilings, walls, anywhere there's asbestos, we would be getting it out of the way and away from our students. In Central Hall, we're going to do a similar thing in terms of interior improvements, classrooms, restrooms, corridors. We're going to expand classrooms in Central to allow us to do social distancing within the context of our classrooms. If we had a room enough for 6 feet of distance, we wouldn't have had to exclude our high school students from the buildings. this past fall. And so one of the things we'll be doing is consolidating some of those classrooms to make them larger so that we can do social distancing in our classrooms. We'll be able to add additional classrooms because we'll be relocating the administration office from the middle of Central Hall to the secure campus connector. And we'll be centralizing all math, science, and performing arts classes into Central. Now, Central is a much bigger building than West, and you'll see that the cost is considerable to update that space. You have East, which is our oldest building on campus, um, which needs quite a bit of love. um, we've proposed to repurpose the small existing gyms to a fully renovated media center to create a different type of library and repurpose the existing library to a community and student multi-use area right at the front of the building. In addition, the corridor going from the secure connector into East Hall will run through what is the existing library space. We will renovate the little theater, I hesitate to call it that, to a large lecture hall, which fits the model for what we believe East Hall will become. And so a new library, updated classrooms and corridors, restrooms, asbestos abatement like we've done in Central and East. And in addition, we'll be centralizing um, English, social studies, and fine arts classes in East Hall, in addition to those improvements. Um, Much bigger space and a more expensive space to renovate given the age of the building. Let's talk a little bit about the secure campus connector. This gives us, excuse me, a larger space in which kids can enter the building. It also gives us a new entry to Normandy High School. Currently, if my grandmother wants to come check on my grades, she has to stop at the guard shack. Then she has to find a parking space somewhere on the interior. Then she's got to walk back to try to get into Central to get to the main office. This will allow someone to pull up to the front of the building, enter into a visitor parking space, and then enter the building with a new main office that is right there at the front. Our security personnel will be stationed there. Instead of just fencing, we will have an actual building that will protect our kids as they are out in the quad from folks who might be bringing danger to them from the parking lot. No longer will you be able to just get through the gate to get to our students. You'd have to come through the building to be able to access the interior quad and Viking Hall. This is the existing visual. So this is looking from the parking lot into the gated area between Central and East Halls. You might recognize that we park buses on the other side of that fence. And once we're done with the secure connector, which will be summer of 2022, that space will look like this. And so this will be where our students will enter every morning. This will be where the main office is. Our community spaces will be here. Our multi-use student spaces will be here. We will also have space for STEM labs as well. Another thing that the Secure Campus Connector does, in addition to giving us new STEM spaces, community spaces, and a more secured, wide open entry, is it also allows us ADA access. And so we're able to put an elevator in the secured campus connector that would allow students to be able to access floors in Central and East Hall that are not currently accessible because of elevator issues. There is no elevator in Central. Kids will be able to get to upper floors in Central once we're done here. And even though there's an elevator in East, it doesn't go to the third floor. And so through the Secure Campus Connector, students will be able to go up the elevator in the connector, and then go across to east on the third floor. And so for our students who have physical challenges, it is a much better situation for them. In addition to that, the Secure Campus Connector will also have student common spaces, places for students to work together, an after school snack shop, a convening spot for our students who we know are going to need us beyond the school day. So secured entry and welcome vestibule, interior connectors between East and Central, no more walking outside to go to lunch, a new administration and student support area, a new student commons area, with plenty of natural light and Wi-Fi and spaces to work together, advanced learning classroom, STEM labs, and community spaces, all in the Secure Campus Connector. Community Auditorium. Normandy has, as everyone as everyone well knows, has a rich and deep history in music and the performing arts. And so the community auditorium gives us not just the opportunity to showcase what our high school students can do, but to build up our program from our elementary school, starting with our fourth graders, all the way through our high school program. We want the 100-person marching band. We want the 100-person symphonic orchestra. And that is about creating the spaces to be able to have those performances and recitals. In addition to that, we don't currently have a space in our footprint to do large gatherings, whether that is some schools' holiday program or Black History program. This community auditorium serves the high school, but also serves the rest of the district, and the younger students all the way down to pre-kindergarten will have a stage on which they can display their genius. In addition to that, it's a community auditorium. And so when we need to have big discussions about what's happening in the municipalities that feed the school district, we have a 1,200 seat space where we can make that work. When we have special guest speakers that come to town, we have a space where they can reach over 1,000 people at once. We actually have a hole in the fence from when someone crashed into our fence last week. So this is not exactly the existing visual, but you know where the space is on the south side of East Hall facing Viking Hall. This is a rendering of what we believe the interior of the new community auditorium will look like. So 1,200 seat auditorium, full function box theater with a proscenium stage, state of the art technology in terms of audio visuals. It'll be something that this community can be very proud of. West Athletic Complex. When I arrived in this role, I was told that our students are at school until sometimes 9 or 10 o'clock trying to complete practice because we don't have enough gym floor space. Viking Hall is beautiful, but it is one basketball court. It is not several. So this would take the additional basketball court at West Gym and expand it by 2. And so into this grassy area that we call West Athletic Field, we will be expanding this structure to include 2 additional gymnasiums, in the hopes that we can have girls and boys basketball, wrestling, cheerleading, and all of those students be able to complete their practices and get home at a decent time. In addition to more practice space, it also gives us an opportunity to update locker rooms for girls and boys at West Gym and add cardio equipment I don't know how we build a weight room with no cardio equipment, but we'll be adding space for cardio equipment at West Gym as well. Viking Hall is a spiritual place for Normandy Vikings, and it just hasn't been updated in the recent years. And so the Viking Hall renovation does a full update of the glass, the windows, the doors on the front of Viking Hall. That's not just the windows and doors, it's all the steel that surrounds those windows and doors. The entire lobby of Viking Hall would be renovated, including concessions and bathrooms and ticketing, as well as provide some spaces to display our exploits from years past, all of our trophies and our acknowledgments. On the interior of Viking Hall, it updates all of the seating. Um, I've been told that the guests are supposed to sit on hard wooden bleachers and be punished while they watch us win the basketball game. That might be the case. Um, but that's a 1950s concept, not a 2021 concept. And so we'll be replacing all the seating in Viking Hall. We'll be updating the locker rooms. They are desperately in need of improvement. We'd be doing something different with the basketball floor to make it more forgiving. Currently, it has a concrete underlayment. We'd go with a rubber underlayment for the floor to ensure that our kids are protected as they run across the wood floor. We'd update scoreboards as well and the audio visuals for Viking Hall. When we're done, we will have restored Viking Hall to the type of place that will be the envy of folks around the region when they come to our Christmas tournament. The track and field is a different kind of project. Our track is not currently regulation, and so we cannot hold track meets because we don't fit within the parameters. This project actually changes the orientation of the track slightly by about 15 degrees, so we get enough length to make it a regulation track. This project would also update the current grass surface to an artificial turf for our students. We've been cited a couple times by the Athletic Association for the condition of our field, and this would remedy that. In addition, new bleachers on each side of the field, and we've proposed locker rooms for underneath both home and visitor locker rooms for underneath the home side lockers. Currently, our students at halftime have to run back to East Hall in order to talk about how they're going to crush the team in the second half. This would give them a space at the actual stadium so that they're not squandering half the halftime running across the parking lot, which is also unsafe in football cleats. And so it gives us, again, not just a place that is safer. We'd go in with a safer rubberized surface for the track. We would implement the type of field spaces that allow us to do shot put and long jump. We would be putting in, again, new bleachers and locker rooms, a new turf field. It allows us, though, also to be very good at youth athletics, and not just for our high school students, our freshman squad, our junior varsity and varsity, but it allows us to take athletics, our track program, track and field program, down into our elementary and middle levels, our football program down into our elementary and middle levels, so that our students grow into an athletic legacy as Normandy Vikings. Um, so we've got from A through H about $55 million in projects. We've proposed two bond initiatives, one no tax at $26.5 million. The other is a tax increase at $24 million that get us toward those projects A through H. But I wanted to signal for you that even as we complete those projects, we still have other things that we need to work on. If you look at J through S, these are just some of the projects that are on the list. So really, we're raising $50 million for the high school renovation, but really could really need about 63 to $65 million to cure the deferred maintenance issues across our districts. And so this bond initiative is specifically about the high school, allows us to remedy the issues there between this spring and the fall of 2023, and allows us to move on to our other schools and making sure that they are state of the art and updated for our students. Okay, I'm going to stop there relative to the the renovation of the high school. I still want to point out for folks that none of the things that we've talked about are settled. None of the things that we've talked about are over prioritized. We still desperately need our students, our parents, our teachers, our administrators, um, our residents in the various municipalities, our elected officials to weigh in on the type of plan, the type of program that needs to come together for our students. So I'm excited about it because um, I know that as we start to work on something really important, which is transforming our high school graduation requirements, that we have to have a space that says we believe in high caliber outcomes for our students. We can't put before them challenging, rigorous coursework and then expect them to have to fight the building just to get an education on a daily basis. And so I'm excited. I hope you're excited as well. And I look forward to having more conversation with you about how we can transform this space and make Normandy High School the best high school in St. Louis County. So be on the lookout for community discussions. Those discussions will likely be in person. It's really hard to capture your thoughts virtually. Um, and so we'd like to put the boards before you. We'd like to capture your information. You'll see some surveys, but in addition to those surveys, please know that we're going to need some time, socially distanced, of course, from some of you to talk through what this looks like in the very near term. We're not talking about 3 months from now. I'm talking about perhaps in the next few weeks. So we're excited about that. Let me say finally that the research is clear that the type of building that kids go to school in influences how they learn or how much they learn. Um, we can't find 10 examples across the entire country where kids are in a high poverty situation with high student outcomes in a dilapidated and rundown building. It just doesn't work. And so we can't have our cake and eat it too. We can't say we want more from our kids. We want them to be more committed to their schoolwork, work harder, work longer. Yet we don't want to do anything to give them spaces to make that work happen. So um, I'm counting on you because I think it's going to take all of us to beat the drum on that. Our board had a retreat a couple of weeks ago, 2 Fridays ago, to talk about some of these issues. And our student panel has me still emotional in terms of what our kids and our teachers face on a daily basis as they are in the space trying to get it done. They are my heroes. And I'm ready to fight for them to get them the kind of space that they deserve. And I hope and suspect that you are equally prepared for that. So look forward to a note from us inviting you to come talk about the future of the high school because we desperately need your input. All right, let's shift gears to another issue that came up in that board retreat, which was we were talking about the space and all of its challenges. Um, but as part of that conversation, our students start to say, essentially to us, as bad as this building is, I'd rather be here than to be at home. That's not to knock home. These did not look like kids who were underfed or who were sleeping in a barrel. But they signal to us that learning is not just about getting access to content, but it's about getting access to the adults that serve them, the teachers, and getting access to each other. Um, One of our students said, I understand why you sent us home, and it was to keep us safe from the pandemic, but we are not safe at home. Um, you may have seen in the news, CNN ran a report just last week on Clark County schools, Las Vegas, urgently trying to put a return to school plan in place because of how their students are being affected by the isolation that has come from trying to learn virtually. The data is just not good. And that's not just a Las Vegas problem or Normandy problem. I'll tell you that we're in contact with superintendents across the region once a week. And it's a problem in the suburbs, the far west suburbs. It's a problem in the far north suburbs, and it's a problem in the city. This is not the ideal situation for our kids to learn. There is no research that supports, on the whole, virtual learning works for any kid. Now, that isn't to say that there aren't exceptions, and there are. There's some wonderfully magnificent, bright, like I don't even understand kids who, if you put them in front of a computer and you leave them alone, you come back in 5 hours and they have a PhD. Virtual learning does work for some children. Um, but for most of us, regular kind of eggheads like myself, the science is clear about how our brains developed. And that's as much a social enterprise as it is an intellectual enterprise. Getting our kids back to school has to be a priority. And I say that suggesting that as much as I know that's an interest, I see parents who've posed a question about when we're going to do return to school. I'm also painfully aware, folks, that we open in-person learning pre-kindergarten to 5 in the fall, and we saw less than 20% of our students return to school. That says to me that after our kids have been out of school for a whole year, we as a community are going to have to pull together to get them back. It won't just be about reopening the doors and saying that they're welcome to come back. It'll be a process of us reorienting our kids to this process of getting up every day, getting on the bus, and making it to school on time, and being engaged with that process. And so, with that being said, pre kindergarten and fifth graders have had the opportunity to return to school since the beginning of the school year. We've been talking about sixth through 12th graders returning and hoping against hope that things would get better. As you, I'm sure, are aware, things have, we've started to see bright lights on the horizon, but we're not yet at a place where we're out of the woods. With that being said, um, I think it's time for us to have a conversation around the return to school of our 6th through 12th graders, even if only in a hybrid fashion. Um, that means a couple days a week, potentially, as opposed to no days a week, because we know that there's a struggle there that we're going to have to help them overcome. That's not just an academic struggle, it's a social and emotional struggle. Now, we don't have a plan. I'm not trying to suggest to you that we've got a date. I'm not going to throw any of that on the table tonight. I just want you to know that it is time for us as a school community to have a discussion about the right timing for our older students to return to school because we know that they need it. If the 17-year-olds are taking the stage and telling the school board they're not safe at home, They need their teachers. They need to be connected to school. This is the place where they learn the best. Well, if the 17-year-olds are saying that, then I'm sure that's true for the 13-year-olds. And so, as a school community, we need to think about that. The CDC has relaxed their social distancing requirements from 6 feet down to 3 feet. Um, have not removed the mask mandate, and we think that's right, just and appropriate. That the science suggests that people are safer in masks, and I tell you, I have been impressed by our children who show up every day, who wear those masks religiously, including my own egghead son, who I was sure would take his mask off 50 times a day. The children are doing well. And as a consequence, I think we've seen very little transmission, kid to kid within our school community. I think worldwide, the data suggests that we don't see high transmission rates in kids. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't be vigilant. And so we've had some real serious conversations to have over the next couple of months about vaccination and our access to vaccination. I'm not trying to make anybody get a shot. I'm just trying to make sure that if you want to get a shot, you have access to a shot. Um, but until we get to vaccination, we're always going to be running some type of risk. That's not news to you. Um, but I'll say to you that our kids need us, and we need a plan for that. So we'll be having conversations over the next few weeks about whether or not there's something we can do in the near term between now and the start of fourth quarter to invite some of our older students back into our school community prior to the end of school year. There was a question posed to us around summer school. We will be offering summer school this summer in June and July, 2 sessions. You'll get information about that. Um, we certainly want as many kids to participate as desire to participate in that summer school program. My hope is we have 100% of our students back for the fall on a compulsory basis, on a mandatory basis, on the you got to get up and bring your behind to school basis, because we know that's the safest place for them intellectually to get access to hope and possibility. And so we've got to craft a plan, I think, that gets us down the road toward making that happen. Again, don't know how to make that happen per se. I'm one guy, and last I checked, I did not go to medical school. But I believe as a community, if we set our goal on making sure our kids have the same kind of access to their schools that the kids in Francis Howell have, that the kids in Rockwood and Parkway will have, then I'm certain that we'll craft a Normandy based solution that gets our kids back into the spaces that they desperately need to grow and to get better. And so my hope is we need to work out something for this spring for our 6th through 12th graders, and we need to all set our sights on trying to get our babies back in these chairs for the fall. There, there was another question around curricular limitations, and we made some decisions to overemphasize English and mathematics. The last time that we tested our students, less than 10% of them were proficient in mathematics, and less than 20% of them were proficient in English language arts. Um, there's no debate here. If our kids can't read, they can't access anything else. And if they can't do the type of computational work that undergirds complex math, there's no point in talking to them about STEM and STEAM, engineering and computer science, when they don't have fundamental foundational math skills. And so you will see for the next few years an overemphasis on English language arts and mathematics in the Normandy Schools Collaborative, especially in the lower levels. This year, we've adopted the Expeditionary Learning Curriculum, which is a much more rigorous um, literacy approach for our students. And guess what? Our kids are struggling with it, but they were struggling with the easy reading that we had before now. What I can tell you is every week our teachers are engaged in professional development to grow and get better at the delivery of that more complex curriculum. The better they get, the better our kids are going to get. And so we are putting in the adult learning time to make sure that we see dividends in the student learning time. More rigorous curriculum, supporting teachers to grow and get better. That's going to help us be a stronger school community. This summer, we're going to adopt a more rigorous math program, kindergarten to eight. That's going to get us down the road toward making some things happen. And so you'll see a consolidation and an overemphasis in ELA and math. And it is because everything we expect them to do at the high school level, no matter what the pathway is, whether it's to college or to a career, expects them to have more math, more English capacity than we left high school with. And so there's just an acknowledgement that the world has changed. And no longer can we be in a position where our kids have a fragmented understanding of what it takes to get to the next level. And so we're going to be building on that. We're going to need your support for that because that's tough. It's tough work, not just for our kids, but for our teachers who are learning new instructional strategies, who are encountering new curriculum content. They need your help and your support as well. Um, and so we're going to continue to push as far as that's concerned. Every kid, kindergarten through eighth grade, will get at least 2 hours of math a day, 2 hours of English a day. And when necessary, we'll go a third hour. For some of our kids, don't get a fourth hour. Some of our kids are going to get 12 months of instruction, whatever it takes to get every one of these babies up to their level prior to them getting to high school. We're going to pull out all the stops to make that work. And so we appreciate you for raising that issue because I think it's pivotal to anything that we want to get done. Setting the right foundation for our students to get to the next level will be important. I'm happy to report to you that the early signs are our teachers' capacity in delivering this instruction is phenomenal. I've watched this work in a couple of different cities, and I will tell you that the Normandy teachers are leaned in on being great at teaching this curriculum in a way that I did not see when I was in Memphis, Tennessee, and district wide adopted the same curriculum. I will tell you that the principals who serve your students are awesome and amazing because they have rolled up their sleeves. They get into these classrooms and they support these teachers in their growth and the development. And so sometimes people buy these curriculums and they sit on the shelf. Normandy has made not just a financial commitment, but a spiritual commitment that is palpable when you go to our schools. And so I'm so proud of our team and all the work that they do to make sure that our kids are getting the very best that they can possibly get relative to our curriculum. And so they're doing a good job. They're going to do an even better job when our kids are back 100%. So we're excited and need your input, especially those of you who are um, employees and former employees, to help us think about the best way to bring our older students who need us just as much as we said, the little babies need us the most. And then our older students just cracked our faces and said, we need you just as much. And so I take that seriously. I know you do too, and invite you in for a conversation to figure out how we get that done. This spring, we have been piloting, or we've started a pilot for school uniforms. We had a group that helped us write our strategic plan last spring. They did some surveys before the strategic plan, and they found that only about a third of our kids felt safe in our school spaces, that they felt physically assaulted, that they felt psychologically put upon. We believe our school uniform will do a couple of things for us. First, provide safety and security. We'll be able to identify those students who actually belong in our school spaces versus the students who don't. Secondly, it mitigates against the impact of poverty, which is to say that if everyone has on the same clothes, then what you wear to school is not an issue. And some of us remember being a fashion plate when we went to fifth grade. Certainly by the time we got to high school, some of us got a little job so we can afford to go to the mall and wear the best clothes and wear the best shoes. But some of us, we remember hand-me-downs and we remember our older brother's clothes and we remember getting to places where you didn't really want to shop in there. Veterans Village or Walmart or Target or Venture for those of us who are really old. And so our school uniform allows us a space where every student can walk through the door with their dignity. They don't have to worry about somebody assaulting them, even just psychologically, about what they've put on that day. And if for whatever reason they don't have the capacity for those clothes to be clean, um, for those clothes to be in good repair, we are in a position as a caring and loving community to replace those clothes and replace that dignity. And so for this pilot, we have given each family 2 uniforms. We are trying to work with the vendor to produce more product. We'd like to give a third uniform. And then we want to see how that goes and reevaluate at the end of the spring about how this works and whether it's working. Um, in the hopes that we'll have a rollout for the summer. Um, Hats off to Regina Marsh, our Director of Community Partnerships Engagement, for going out to help us find donors who are willing to stand with us to ensure that our kids have dignity when they come into space. The last part about school uniforms is this: teacher expectations affect student achievement. What a teacher thinks about a student actually manifests in whether or not those kids learn. And so color matters, gender matters, body image matters, where a student actually physically sits in the room matters. In essence, what I'm saying is what a teacher thinks about how a child is dressed influences whether they have high expectations or low expectations. That's probably the most powerful part of a discussion around why we would even contemplate this. It is a subliminal issue, but it's a real issue and it's backed up by science. And so we always want our students, our teachers, not to be judging the fashion of our kids, but thinking about the excellence within them. And so your input here will also be important, whether or not we're getting this right. 3 may not be enough. Maybe we need to think about 4. Perhaps the way we've conceived the uniform is ill-conceived. We want to talk about that. And so we've leaned in on the pilot and welcome your feedback as we move forward. And so thank you for those of you who've come up to central office and retrieved your child's uniforms. I have seen the babies jumping out of cars and walking into buildings, and they look absolutely amazing. And we are so grateful for the support that our community has shown so far for this program. It is part of building a strong culture within the school community and fits within the parameters of our strategic plan. All right, those were my 3 big things. Let me try to make sure that we're answering questions that you have posed um, before we close out. Um, there's a question around whether Belmore will be closing, and we don't have an answer to that at this particular time. What we know for sure is 2 things. One, uh, almost like the high school. I hate to compare Belmore to the high school because it's not in as bad a shape, but Belmore has years of deferred maintenance that need to be cured and cannot easily be cured, whether it's the um, HVAC system that is antiquated or non-existent in some places, the condition of the walls and floors, the bathrooms. It is a costly remodel that, frankly, our conversation has centered on a replacement versus a renovation. Right? There's just so much work to do at Belnor that it just makes more sense to knock it down and build another one. The second thing about Belnor is, given where it sits in the district, there are few kids assigned to the space. And so it actually costs us on a per pupil basis twice what it costs us to um, have students in other buildings, about $18,000 per student. With that being said, there's a question in our minds around whether we should continue to operate Belnor as a school. And the jury is still out. We've enlisted the help of a consultant that will help us think through what redistricting of those, there are only a couple hundred kids in the building, what redistricting of those students might look like. What does that mean for transportation? Um, because we don't want our buses overwhelmed to the point where we can't effectively, we have kids sitting on top of each other. Do we have adequate space at the other buildings to accommodate the students who are currently there? So there are myriad issues to figure out. I'm not dodging the question. I'm just saying that we haven't finished the study yet. As soon as we are finished with the study, however, we'll be back to you to talk about what we found and get your input about how we should move forward, whether we should leave Belmore open or contemplate doing something else. The next question says, what measure does the district have in place to prevent teacher layoffs? And I will tell you unequivocally, I just cannot conceive of a situation where we would lay off teachers. There's a national teacher shortage. Um, I actually sat on a statewide commission sponsored by the Department of Education and the legislature in the state of Indiana because there were so few teachers available um, for school districts in that area, to the point where they were talking about passing millions and millions of dollars of legislation to encourage more people to go into the profession. That being said, we need our teachers. We're investing a lot of time in professional development and adult learning. We don't want to lose one of them. And so um, we have done some reductions in some positions, but do not conceive of thinking about laying off any teachers or needing to do that. Fortunately, there's some additional money coming from the federal government, and that's good. But even if that money weren't coming, Normandy desperately has a need for great teaching and great teachers. And so we need more teachers, not fewer teachers. And so if you've got an aunt or cousin and a teacher's license, please have them come see us. We'd love to talk to them about being a part of our team. But we do not contemplate any layoffs for 21, 22, or even the years beyond that. Um, there's a question about why the teachers are not in control of their own curriculum this year. This year's school curriculum seems to have no room to adjust. Um, as I've said, we're doing a couple things. One, we're trying to enter into a more rigorous space, but we're also trying to enter a space of universality, right? That the third grade experience at Obama should not be magnificently better or magnificently worse than the third grade experience at Washington. We should be able to have fifth grade teachers across the district support each other because they are implementing curriculum in a similar way, in a similar fashion. And so while we are aware that in the past, professional development has looked different from building to building, curriculum has looked slightly different from building to building, there is a need for us to be one Normandy right now. If we're going to get ourselves to a much better place, and we just have to, not because of accreditation, not because of anybody's teaching contract or teacher's license, but because our children deserve that, then we're only going to make it there together. And so we do need to make a commitment to something really strong, really rigorous, and support each other in trying to grow toward um, those outcomes. The question is there any word on vaccines? And